the Army was in clearing out the concentration camps, you see.
Right.
And the people that could walk just walked out. They were rescued by somebody or other, but there were piles of bodies there, and some of them were breathing, and so they would bring them, they brought them to us, and not all of them, but we were quite a few, and as far as I can recall, none of them lived.
Oh, really?
No, they were conscious. They couldn't speak, but their eyes were very eloquent. They knew they were in a clean bed and someone was looking after them. You couldn't feed them very much. They were so starved. You had to be very careful with fluid. And it was hard to bathe them because you were afraid of breaking their skin. They were just so emaciated. It was dreadful. And some of them had little things with them, like I remember this one man had a piece of gold from out of his tooth, I guess, and a little battered pair of spectacles, which would be very precious if you needed to see. And they didn't live very long. That was just heartrending, really.
Must have been.
And from there was another hospital moved in there, and they did sort of a cleanup operation, I think, of soldiers that needed medical care and so on. And we went to a place called, Dorgan.
Appleton.
Yeah, that was another convent, it was a Jesuit monastery. And we set up there, and we didn't do much. We had maybe one or two patients. And the matron went off to London on leave, and I was appointed as a matron, and then we didn't have any patients, and all of a sudden we were shipped back to London, and we stayed there and waited for a ship until I think we came home in July, as I recall, and we came home on the New Amsterdam ship, so another lovely big ship, and then we came across Canada on trains with two to a lower berth and one to an upper. And thank God I had the upper berth because they were so narrow,
Yeah.
And when we got to New Westminster, there was a huge crowd here waiting. And, of course, they were having a reception in Vancouver, too. And they gave me they wanted me to, said, you have to stay on to Vancouver. There's a big reception. I said, oh, there'll be one in Westminster, I'm sure. And I knew my family would be there. So he gave me a ticket to go to Vancouver because he owed me a piece from Westminster. So I was to take the train on, if I wanted to Vancouver from Westminster.
Okay.
Anyway, that's when they had a service. So I don't think I ever used that. So I volunteered then to go to Japan, or to the Pacific. But while I was home on leave, they dropped the bomb, and that was the end of that. So I had wanted to go back to university to get my master's degree in social work. I had an idea that I'd like to use the two. And so it was July, and I just asked if I could have they were sending me up to Vernon, and I said, well, I would really like to get out of the Army and get back to university. And so they were delighted, because they didn't like to, when we came back, they didn't want to dump you right out on the street. See. But if I was willing to go, that was fine. But most of the girls, they found jobs for them in the Army here and there. And so I applied to Toronto and got in and got my degree there in 2 years on the that's how I took my separation
from the
my separation allowances. So you could do a number of things. You could go to university, or you could buy a car if you needed it for your job, or you could take a small holding. There were all kinds of things. But
Good.
so I.
Good. And so that's the end. Well, we're going to back up just a little bit here. VE Day, obviously you were working quite along afterwards, but when you found out that the Germans had surrendered, what were your feelings?
Oh, German. It was, it was a very strange thing. We were in Holland then, and we were so tired, I think, and disgusted. The colonel was very annoyed with us because he wanted to celebrate. He thought we should celebrate in the hospital, but nobody's heart was in it. That was how it was. We were far more exuberant, I think, when they drove the Germans out of Italy.
Right.
And they got rid of Mussolini, and then we were quite happy about that.
Right.
But I remember I was sitting having breakfast with my father, and in those days they had a morning paper, the News Herald, and he said, "My God, they've dropped the bomb." And I said, "What bomb?" We were sort of, I guess we knew there was a bomb, nuclear bomb, but we didn't have much meaning,
Right.
And we didn't get news the way other people did. So that was kind of a shock, Well, I know I won't. They told me to go off on leave, you see, and I could come and sign up for the Pacific Theater later, after, if I wanted to.
What were your feelings like when you stepped foot on home soil?
Well, very strange. I don't think many of us we'd been away, it wasn't an awfully long time, but we'd been in a different kind of a world, and we're almost afraid to come back. And when I'm thinking about the problem in New York, all this terrible devastation, and there was a documentary thing or news thing on the other night about the people that have been working there since the 11th of July, I don't know,
Right.
And some of them go after work every night, and others seem to have given up their jobs and just work down as volunteers. And some of them they'd like to, I think, get them back to wherever they came from now. But I think they've gotten into this sort of world of, it's a kind of unreal, exciting world, and it made me think, that sounds to me like it was after the army. And then I felt very strange, and people were, I remember asking for something in a store, and they'd say, "Well, there's a war on, and I heard this woman say, "Where did you get this terrible permanent?" I was getting my hair done, and I was fed up with the whole thing, and I said, "In Rome." And so she shut up. But we couldn't get anything done to our hair or cutting or anything. And but they were, you'd forgotten that you could have certain things, buy certain things, and it was a strange feeling.
And then what was the response of your family coming back?
Oh, they were glad to have me back, but of course, I took off right away for Toronto. So.
Right.
In the meantime, my father had married again, which was fine because my mother had died many years before. And I was glad of that because I didn't feel any obligation to stay home and look after him.
Right.
And I was ready. And I think it would have been bad to go back. They still wanted me in my old job. But I never did go back to Vancouver, and I think that was the right thing to do, to make a complete change. And that made it. And then I got back to Toronto, and we were all veterans in the school anyway. So it was an easing into.
Right.
None of us had any money or any clothes or anything, because we got $60 a month in our fees, for the school, for the university term, but when in the summer and from April on, I had to find a job,
Right.
which I did. I went down. I worked in New York State for the summer.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
And do you belong to any veterans organizations?
Well, yes, I belong to the Canadian, Army Nursing Sisters of Canada is the title,
Right.
and we tried to change the name to Military Nurses of Canada, but there seemed to be some reason it never was explained to me. But we don't. There are a lot of men that are nurses now, and they're in the Army, and they're not going to join an organization that's called Nursing Sisters.
Right.
But we had a biennial meeting every 2 years. We'd have a national meeting, and but a year ago, June, we wound it up because we just couldn't cope with it any longer. But we still have a local association in Vancouver, and we have a luncheon in November for Remembrance Day and a spring luncheon, and at the Jericho Golf Club, and that's very nice. But among those people, hardly anybody that I knew in the Army, because I went over with number 3 and stayed with it. Most people got moved around a bit, you know. I was sick and got pneumonia, and by rights I should have been sent down to a base hospital, but we weren't busy then. We were at Anagni, and the colonel said, no, I could stay there, and I was nursed in the hospital, and when they moved the hospital, they moved me in an ambulance. Because our colonel didn't like to lose the old originals, you see. He wanted to keep us. So, but the medical officer in charge wasn't very pleased about it.
So what does it mean to you to be a veteran?
Well, I'm proud of it, you know, but I don't talk about it very much. Sometimes I find one of the things that bothers me really is there's so much talk about the invasion, you know, the European invasion and so on, and so little is said about North Africa and Italy, and those terrible battles the men fought all the way across North Africa and then up the Italian. But they get very little recognition. It's all D-Day, you know. And that bothers me sometimes. But there are people who get out of the Army and never, well, they seem to, their life seems to stop there. They never stop thinking about it and talking about it. I never felt like that. I went on and made another life. But it was a part of my life that was very interesting, and I certainly don't want another war, but I wouldn't have missed it.
Right.
The experience.
Right. How do you observe Remembrance Day?
How do I observe? Well, I go to the city hall sometimes. I haven't always gone, and when I wear my medals, and someone asked me, "Do you wear those medals for your husband?" Or I said, "No, you can't. You don't wear somebody else's medals." You know? They never seem to think that I might have gotten those medals myself.
Wow, eh?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you? Oh, sorry.
Oh no, sorry. I remember I also have a pin for Corps Troops, which was the one that took us up from the reason I got to Holland or to Europe from Italy, which it wasn't supposed to be. I get there, and I had this pin for the Corps Troops, and so I was working at Sunnybrook Hospital, which was a military then, and there was this colonel, somebody or other, who was now a civilian. He was sitting at lunch beside me, and he said, "Do you wear that for your husband's service?" And I said, no, I work for my own. I didn't. And he said, well, there are no women in court. And I said, yes, there were. There weren't many of us, but there were a few.
Right.
Yeah. But
Right.
I don't find young people are very interested in it. It's a boring subject to them, so I don't say much about it.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Yeah,
You'd
some
be
might
surprised.
be,
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's about it
Yeah.
for the interview.
Yeah.
And, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I seem to have gone all over the lot. But,
I think we got you down pretty well. Yeah. If there's something else you'd like to add.
You know, I think one of the things I'd like to mention was penicillin.
Right.
And how it was at Casino when we had this medical officer attached to us. He was a very important internist, really, from Montreal, and he had a lab, and he was making penicillin. Well, I didn't even, we didn't know anything about penicillin, really, and we got 2 cases of gas gangrene, which is a terrible thing, and he called me and he said, you'd better see this case of gas gangrene, you'll never see another case. It was a terrible thing. We don't know how it got, but there were 2 cases. Right. They arrived with it. And so he gave me this hypo and said, give him this. And I said, what is it? And he said, well, it's penicillin, but it's too little and too late, I'm afraid, but it's all we have. And of course it was not enough. But within, less than a month, we had all kinds of penicillin. And the story of that being developed is really, I didn't realize until I saw this old film on TV, and it was how this one man in England tried his darndest to get the British to develop this, because he knew it would be the penicillin fungus was there to work on, and he couldn't get them to do much. And he and a pal made some in rather tacky instruments and equipment that they put together. And then he got Upjohns, I think it was, in the States to be interested, and they produced tons of it and never gave him any credit for the development he'd done. But that's how we came to get it. And so when I read this, I saw this thing, I thought, I must have given one of the first doses in the army, But I noticed there's a girl, I think somewhere in this book, she mentions giving one, so she might have been the first one, but I don't know.
Wow.
But I just think I might have been the first. I'd never make that claim.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then after that we had lots.
Right.
But if you need